As Rembrandt entered middle age, his etchings were amongst his most popular works, and they sold for good sums of money. But by the middle of that decade, the Rembrandt's financial situation had come to a head, and in 1656 he was declared bankrupt. Over the next 2 years, his house and possessions were sold to pay his creditors. The inventory of his objects revealed a diverse collection of sculptures, jewellery, weapons and armour. But not even the sale of all his worldly goods was enough to clear Rembrandt's debts completely.
At a certain point in the late 50s, there were the wars with England, which had a very bad effect on the Dutch economy, and incomes fell. And Rembrandt also stopped, not stopped really, but did not paint so much portrait anymore, which seems to be a quite deliberate action, choice. And these portraits, for which he received often 100 guilders or something, were a steady source of income. So on one side we see a negative effect on his income, but on the other hand he kept on buying precious things and objects, and it doesn't go together, I guess. And that's what gave rise to his bankruptcy.
Remarkably, Rembrandt's perilous financial situation failed to diminish the quality of his work. As bankruptcy loomed, he painted the portrait of Jan Six, which shows his unique approach to brushwork. After being declared insolvent, and despite having no settled Amsterdam residence, his art continued to develop, and the images he created in the last 10 years of his life are among his greatest. Rembrandt's art flourished, partly due to the support of his son, Titus, and his mistress, Hendrikia Stoffels. These two people provided the subject matter for many paintings and etchings. London's National Gallery is home to this fine panel of Hendrikia bathing in a river. In 1660, Hendrikia and Titus set up an arrangement whereby Rembrandt formally became an employee of their art shop with an advance of 1,750 florins. Despite the generosity of his son and mistress, Rembrandt's days of celebrity were now in the past. At this time, commissions to paint the interior of Amsterdam's new town hall were being given to the artists of the day, and they represented a gold rush of opportunity. But Rembrandt was not amongst these artists. Only the death of his former pupil, Govert Flinck, meant that Rembrandt received one commission, the Conspiracy of Claudius Civilius, a depiction of a Netherlands tribe's rebellion against the Romans in AD 70. It was a suitable subject for a confident nation that had only shaken off Spanish domination decades earlier. But the canvas was not well received, and it was removed from the town hall shortly after its completion. But Rembrandt still possessed enough influence to secure a commission for a final group portrait, a painting of 6 members of the Clothmakers' Guild. Completed in 1662, it is the third of the artist's great group portraits, following the Anatomy Lesson and the Night Watch. At first glance, this image seems to have more in common with Rembrandt's first group masterpiece. It is an uncomplicated image, with no great sense of Baroque drama. But it does reveal the older Rembrandt's total mastery of painting human beings as real, living individuals with their own lives and concerns, an ability shared by Frans Hals.
It is absolutely fascinating painting, partly from the way he deals with the subject and partly the way he deals with paint and with the means he used. I mean, there is this group of faces is absolutely superb in its presence. But that is not only through his genius as a painter. He must have thought very much about how to arrange them. And when you read the X-ray, you can see that they keep moving and changing positions, etc. And in the end, they all look in the same direction. It is as if the people from the anatomy lessons of Dr. Tulp sort of switch their glance to the viewer, and suddenly all of them look at the viewer. And that brings in unity into the painting. And there is a whole literature about what he meant by that. But I think it's still a way to make a group portrait in a history painting.
By 1662, the painter of this remarkable canvas was approaching old age. Sadly, these final years would be marked by still more personal tragedy for Rembrandt. In 1663, Hendrikia Stoffels died. In 1668, his beloved son Titus died at the age of 27. Rembrandt was now a lonely man of 62, with only months to live. But he never stopped painting until the day of his death. And in the final year of his life, Rembrandt painted the last installment in what had been a lifelong enterprise, self-portraiture. This is Rembrandt's final great canvas depicting himself in 1669. This is the highly chiaroscuro painting of himself from 40 years previously. In the interim, Rembrandt continually used himself as subject matter for his paintings. This self-portrait of 1640 shows a confident and wealthy artist at the height of his fame. Taken together, these images have been seen as a visual autobiography without parallel in the history of art, a succession of paintings where Rembrandt never hides his own physical flaws. For many, it is this final canvas that is the greatest of them all. Here, Rembrandt's physical depiction of the face reveals the psychological signs of a checkered life and career. However, this painting from the previous year shows the artist laughing. We know that Rembrandt was experiencing the final sadness and loss at this time, yet this is hardly a tragic image.
To an extent, the self-portraits are autobiographical in the sense that they do trace his changing image. But I think they're more than that as well. They also give us indications about his own ambitions as an artist. Because there are numerous occasions when Rembrandt seems to be testing himself against past artists. There's a self-portrait in the style of Raphael, there's a self-portrait in the style of Titian as well. So Rembrandt, with this sense of what had happened in the past, was emulating past artists.
I think they are a very sustained meditation on the artistic persona of Rembrandt, this idea of what is it to be an artist in Holland in the 17th century, to claim the position of the artist as being alongside that of the writer. And they are enormously inventive and articulate about various dimensions of the artistic persona, but I'd like to separate that from a sense of somehow getting at his true emotions or his angst about something, because I don't think that's what they are about.
Rembrandt's mastery of self-portraiture in paint was matched by a similar ability with the needle, although for reasons unknown, he virtually stopped etching self-portraits whilst still in his early 30s. Many of these images were effectively used as sketches for figures that would appear in full-scale etchings and canvases. Rembrandt, like all great artists, needed hard preliminary work to fully bring out his genius. When Rembrandt van Rijn died on the 4th of October 1669, he was a lonely and debt-stricken man. It is said that at the time of his death, he possessed nothing but his clothes and his painting materials. 4 days later, he was buried in Amsterdam's Westerkerk church. Such a contrast between worldly wealth and artistic greatness is not unusual in the history of art. But in the case of Rembrandt, it is difficult not to be astonished. Such was the sheer size of his life's achievement. Only posterity has given him his deserved status as the greatest of the Dutch masters.
Without any doubt, Rembrandt is a milestone in the history of art. And what you often see in the history of art, that at the beginning of some development, have such an enormous creative ability that everything which happens after them seems more or less related to it. They throw a shadow which only the biggest artists can escape.
Rembrandt was obviously, I think, the most influential, important artist of the 17th century. He's given us some of the most supreme insights into the workings of the human soul. The German painter Max Liebermann realised the greatness of Rembrandt. He said that when he looked at Frans Hals, it encouraged him to paint. When he saw a Rembrandt, he felt like giving up.
Certain works, like the Jewish Bride or so, are really painters' paintings. I mean, he is really an artist for artists. His work conveys the feeling to everybody that he can project his own feelings in his work, and in that sense, his work, like with every great artist, is truly modern and timeless.